Over the wastelands hung silence, thick and impenetrable like dust that hadn't felt rain for centuries. The sky, immersed in shades of pale blue, seemed to be the sole witness to times when the earth was not yet a lifeless shadow of days gone by. The exile stood alone, their figure casting a short shadow on the sun-cracked soil that stretched all the way to the horizon, where sky and earth met in an infinite dance of apocalypse. Every step on this barren ground stirred up a cloud of dust, settling slowly as if reluctantly leaving the air, the only space where it could still float freely. The wind, at times sweeping through the wasteland, felt like the cold breath of a forgotten world, carrying with it the scent of ancient mysteries and long-concluded tales. The exile could feel the sand particles striking their face, a constant reminder of the unending struggle for survival. There was nothing around except decaying structures, once symbols of human progress, now mere skeletons of the past. Rusted car wrecks and ruined buildings were like tombs, where dreams of a better tomorrow lay. Each of these relics told its own story, of days when the world still pulsated with life before being consumed by the fiery wrath of atomic fury. In the distance, at the edge of visibility, distorted silhouettes of overgrown creatures flickered. They now ruled these lands. Their cries echoed through the air, reminding the exile that they were not alone, even though humanity might never again tread upon these abandoned grounds. In this ruthless world, where every day was a struggle for survival, the exile knew he had to find the strength to create a new home from the ruins of the old. And though the future was as uncertain as the shifting winds of the wasteland, a spark of hope glimmered in his heart, a spark that could ignite the flame of a new beginning. Night inexorably approached, bringing with it a cold as deadly as the radiation still smoldering beneath the earth's surface. The exile kindled a fire, its dancing flames casting shadows on the surrounding ruins. The fire was like a beacon of hope in the abyss of despair, its warmth providing solace, and the flames seemed to dance with determination, as if to remind everyone that life still existed here, stubborn and undefeated. In the distance, where darkness was thickest, the exile discerned movement. The eyes of the towering creatures, now the masters of these lands, gleamed in the darkness like ominous stars. Their breaths were heavy and hunger-laden, and each step served as a reminder that every night here could be their last. But the exile was no longer the same person who had left the vault. The wastelands remade him, tempering his spirit and body. He knew that tomorrow he would set out once more in search of life, water, shelter, seeking a future for those who might still come. And though he didn't know what dawn would bring, he was certain of one thing: he wouldn't give up without a fight. In the solitude where only his own breath echoed, the exile wrestled with demons that denied him peace. His thoughts were like wanderers who had lost their way in the labyrinth of the past, constantly returning to the same unanswered questions. Could I have acted differently? That question was like thorns that incessantly scratched at his conscience. In moments when the flames of the campfire danced before his eyes, he saw in them the faces of those he had left behind. Were their judgments fair? Was his exile a necessity, or a mistake that could be rectified? Deep within his soul he felt that the decisions he had made were like stones cast into the pond of life, creating ripples whose reach he couldn't foresee. With each passing day, his determination grew as if trying to drown out the doubts. The exile knew he couldn't allow his past to define his future. He was like a tree, bent by the wind, but still firmly rooted in the ground. His exile, though marked by the stigma of loss, became a challenge for him, a challenge to build something new, something better. even amidst the ruins of the world he knew. At night, when the stars and moon illuminated the sky with their brilliance, he wondered if there was a place for him beyond the horizon, a place where he could start anew, free from the burden of judgment. But as dawn dispelled the darkness and reality returned, he knew the answer. His place was here, among the rocks and canyons, fighting for survival and hoping for a better tomorrow. The inner conflicts of the exile were like a fire that erupted within him, but each time he rose from the ashes of his doubts, he grew stronger. He was ready to face whatever the next day would bring, believing that every new breath held a promise, that he could still shape his destiny. When the sun set behind the horizon, casting its last rays onto the scorched wasteland, the outcast knew he had to act quickly. The first nights outside the secure gates of the crypt were spent under the open sky, huddled in an old, torn jumpsuit with the number 13 on the back, which served as his only protection against the cold night. His first task was to find water. The wastelands were merciless, and water was scarce. The outcast knew he had to seize every opportunity to locate hidden groundwater sources. After several days of searching, he stumbled upon a rusty but still functional water pump buried under a pile of debris. With difficulty, he repaired the mechanism using his repair skills, and though the water was murky, it became his first major success. Food presented the next challenge. Initially, he relied on fruits and small iguanas found in abandoned ruins and under dry trees, but he knew those supplies would quickly run out. He began hunting small mutated creatures like rats and rad scorpions that roamed the area. Each hunt was risky and full of dangers, but every captured specimen meant another day of survival. Building shelter against the desert dust and sand was the most time-consuming task. The outcast decided to utilize wrecked cars, metal fragments, and old fabric sheets to create something resembling a relatively safe temporary refuge. Each element had to be carefully selected and thought out to withstand the winds and sandstorms that frequently swept through the wasteland. As the days turned into weeks, the outcast became increasingly adept at survival. Each new challenge, from battling predators to gathering resources, shaped him, teaching him how to sustain life in a world that offered no easy answers. After many days of trekking through the mercilessly sun-scorched wasteland, the outcast finally glimpsed something that quickened his heartbeat. Canyons, as if carved by a giant's hands into the earth, forming a natural fortress. At their heart, hidden from the eyes of random wanderers, flowed a small stream that struggled through rocks and sand. Standing on the edge of one of the canyons, the outcast allowed himself a moment of relief. The wind, which had previously seemed only a carrier of dust and heat, now carried the scent of moisture and greenery. With closed eyes, he breathed deeply, feeling each inhalation revive his weary body. Opening his eyes, he descended slowly toward the stream. The water was cool and clear, a rarity in the wastelands where every drop was worth its weight in gold. The outcast leaned down, immersed his hands, and washed his face, allowing the chill to cleanse away fatigue and travel grime. Looking around, he noticed that the canyons offered natural protection against winds and predators. The stream provided essential water, and the land around it was fertile enough to consider cultivating simple plants. Together, these conditions created an ideal environment for life, a true luxury in the desolate wastelands. Outcast stood at the edge of the canyon, gazing across the rugged landscape. The canyons, while offering protection, also presented their own challenges. Their peaks rose high, and their walls were steep, riddled with crevices that could serve as both shelter and traps. With the determination necessary for survival in the wastelands, the outcast began his ascent. Each step had to be calculated, every handhold secure. He knew that any mistake could cost him his life. Climbing demanded not only physical strength but also mental fortitude as he battled his own fear and exhaustion. After a long and grueling climb, he finally reached the summit of one of the canyons. From above, he had a better view of the surroundings, vast wastelands stretching out to the horizon. Yet what captured his attention lay on the other side of the canyon. There, amidst rocky walls, flowed a stream of crystalline, sweet water. This discovery renewed his spirit. With newfound hope in his heart, the outcast began planning how to safely reach that settlement, wondering if his fate might intertwine with the destinies of others across the canyon. Being on site, the outcast could now better assess the terrain he had chosen for his new home. The towering rocks surrounding him formed a natural fortress, and the expansive fields teeming with geckos promised both sustenance and danger. His first task was securing the immediate surroundings. The outcast started by gathering large stones and branches to create simple fortifications. He knew that while geckos could serve as a food source, they were also agile and dangerous, especially in groups. The fortifications aimed not only to protect him from these creatures, but also to create barriers that could aid in capturing them. Next, he focused on examining the soil. The area around the stream appeared fertile, and the moisture from the water made the earth soft and nutrient-rich. The outcast understood that cultivating crops could significantly improve his chances of long-term survival. However, the lack of seeds posed a serious problem. He decided that he would have to venture into nearby ruins or abandoned settlements in search of something to plant. In the meantime, he set about constructing a simple shelter. Using materials he found, such as planks from broken wagons and pieces of sheet metal, he built a small hut that could protect him from the nighttime chill and wild animals. The shelter was modest and delicate, but it marked the first step toward creating something more enduring. Every day the outcast became more familiar with the rhythm of life in the wastelands. He learned to track geckos, understand their habits, and utilize the natural traps of the terrain to catch them. Each successful hunt was a small victory that bolstered his strength and confidence in his ability to survive. He had to carefully avoid radioactive patches to prevent radiation sickness. However, loneliness and the constant struggle for survival began to take their toll. The outcast often wondered if and when he would encounter other people with whom he could share his daily hardships and triumphs. For now, he focused on what mattered most: survival and building a new life in the place he had chosen as his home. With each passing day, the outcast grew more adept and self-assured in his new surroundings. His survival skills, once born out of desperation, had transformed into routine and even artistry. He had achieved a certain stability, but he knew he needed to think about the future, securing more sustainable sources of food and materials. One day, during one of his expeditions beyond the boundaries of his settlement, the outcast stumbled upon tracks unlike any he had seen before. These tracks belonged to Brahman, a two-headed cattle species. Not only were Brahman a source of abundant meat, but their valuable hides were essential for crafting more durable and larger tents. Encouraged by this discovery, the outcast began regularly leaving his village to track these extraordinary creatures. He learned their habits, the paths they traversed, and the locations where they grazed in open fields. Each expedition was risky, but every successful return, with fresh supplies of meat and hides, bolstered his strength and confidence in his decision to settle here. Over time, thanks to the Brahmin hides, the outcast managed to construct a larger and more resilient tent. It was a structure that could withstand even the worst sandstorms and offer more comfort during the cold, unforgiving desert nights. This new shelter not only improved his daily life, but also became a symbol of his growing skills and adaptation to life in the wastelands. It happened. After many months of solitude and hard work, the outcast began to feel increasingly secure in his new reality. However, one night, his peace was disrupted by something unexpected. On the horizon, amidst the darkness of the night, he spotted flickering lights. His first thought was unequivocal: invaders. His heart raced, and a wave of anxiety flooded his mind. Throughout the night, he kept his eyes open, observing the lights from a distance as they seemed to draw closer to his shelter. Prepared for the worst, he checked his supplies and weapons, ready to defend his home against potential threats. Every day the outcast became more familiar with the rhythm of life in the wastelands. He learned to track geckos, understand their habits, and utilize the natural traps of the terrain to catch them. Each successful hunt was a small victory that bolstered his strength and confidence in his ability to survive. He had to carefully avoid radioactive patches to prevent radiation sickness. However, loneliness and the constant struggle for survival began to take their toll. The outcast often wondered if and when he would encounter other people with whom he could share his daily hardships and triumphs. For now, he focused on what mattered most: survival, and building a new life in the place he had chosen as his home. With each passing day, the outcast grew more adept and self-assured in his new surroundings. His survival skills, once born out of desperation, had transformed into routine and even artistry. He had achieved a certain stability, but he knew he needed to think about the future, securing more sustainable sources of food and materials. One day, during one of his expeditions beyond the boundaries of his settlement, the outcast stumbled upon tracks unlike any he had seen before. These tracks belonged to Brahmin, a two-headed cattle species. Not only were Brahmin a source of abundant meat, but their valuable hides were essential for crafting more durable and larger tents. After many months of solitude, the moment the exile had been waiting for finally arrived. Standing on a steep ledge that separated him from the group of newcomers from Vault 13, he noticed approaching figures. His heart beat faster with a mix of emotions and uncertainty. When the group was close enough to communicate freely, the exile's first words were simple but sincere: "Welcome, friends. It's wonderful to see you." The newcomers, 4 women and 4 men, also expressed relief and joy. They introduced themselves one by one, sharing brief stories of their journey and admiring what the exile had achieved in such a harsh environment. "We need to talk about many things, but first, let me show you the way to the summit," said the exile, pointing to the path winding along the canyon. The group followed him in agreement, walking the path that would lead them to a new life. Leading the way, the exile felt the weight of a new responsibility on his shoulders. He was no longer alone. Now he had people who believed in his vision and were ready to face the challenges of the wild, uncharted land. After a long journey, the group arrived at the spot where the exile had set up his new tent. It was a sturdy, spacious shelter meant not only for him, but now also for his new companions. As evening approached, everyone gathered around the campfire to rest after a day filled with emotions and effort. The exile kindled a fire that quickly became the heart of their small community. The warmth of the flames and the gentle firelight created a cozy and soothing atmosphere. They began to talk, sharing their experiences and plans for the future. One of the men, who had been a cook back in Vault 13, took charge of preparing a meal. He used Brahmin meat that the exile had acquired earlier, adding wild herbs like brock and xander roots that he had learned to recognize and gather. The dish was simple but filling, a perfect way to end a day full of challenges. The women, who had brought small supplies from the vault, shared them with everyone, offering dried fruits and pieces of bread. Water was precious, but that evening they decided to celebrate a little, allowing each person to drink a bit more to honor their safe arrival and new beginning. Around the campfire, as the flames danced to the rhythm of the night wind, conversations began to take on a deeper, more serious tone. One of the men, who had remained silent for a long time, started asking about the exile's journey and missions. His battle with the mysterious mutant known as the Master, who used the FEV virus to transform people into super mutants. "We must remember why we are here and what the exile has done for all of us," he began, gazing at the flickering flames. His fight against the Master, the destruction of that laboratory, those were actions that not only saved us from super mutant attacks, but also showed how far one can go in defending humanity. The woman sitting next to him added, "That's true. The forced evolution virus was a terrifying tool, but thanks to the exile's courage, we now have a chance at a new life here, without fear of such a threat." The conversation evolved into a discussion about the importance of remembering the past while also looking to the future with hope and determination. Together, they pondered how to pass these values on to the next generations growing up in their new village. The next day, as the sun began to illuminate the wasteland, the exile gathered all the newcomers to discuss plans for the future of their community. The meeting took place in an open area where everyone could freely express their opinions and ideas. The exile started by outlining the plan for constructing additional houses. He explained the necessary materials and how they could acquire them using the resources available in the wasteland. Then, he moved on to organizational matters crucial for survival and the development of their small society. "We need to determine who will be responsible for specific tasks," he said. "We require hunters to track down geckos and other animals, individuals responsible for food preparation, and those who can teach us combat skills and survival techniques." He suggested that anyone feeling strong and agile could volunteer as hunters. Those with experience in cooking or food preservation could take charge of meal preparation. People with military experience or a quick aptitude for learning new skills could become combat and survival instructors. "We also need scouts to monitor the surroundings and keep us informed about any threats or new resources we might utilize," he added. After his words, a discussion began. Each person had the opportunity to express their preferences and volunteer for a role that best suited their skills and experience. The exile listened attentively, taking notes to effectively manage tasks and allocate responsibilities. The meeting concluded with a sense of community and readiness to work. Everyone felt they had a specific purpose, and each individual was an integral part of this emerging society. As life in the new settlement gained momentum, and the residents increasingly felt at home, the exile grew closer to one of the Vault 13 inhabitants, named Patricia. Together they shared their daily lives, strengthening their mutual bonds. One day, when the settlement was functioning well, and its inhabitants felt safe and integrated, they decided to give their new home an official name. They chose Arroyo, paying homage to the stream that flowed through the nearby rocks. This name symbolized the life-giving force of water, essential for survival in the harsh wasteland. On August 18, 2167, naming the settlement Arroyo was a significant moment for all its residents. It not only reinforced their sense of community, but also instilled a feeling of permanence and belonging to a place they had collectively shaped. It marked another step toward building a strong, united, and thriving society. As life in the new settlement began to pick up pace and the residents increasingly felt at home, the exile approached one of the Vault 13 dwellers named Patricia. Together they started sharing their daily lives, which strengthened their mutual bonds. One day when the settlement was functioning well and its inhabitants felt safe and integrated, they decided to give their new home an official name. They chose Arroyo, paying homage to the stream that flowed through the rocks near their settlement. This name symbolized the life-giving power of water, essential for survival in the harsh wasteland conditions. On August 18th, in the year 2067, naming the settlement Arroyo was a significant moment for all its residents. It not only reinforced their sense of community, but also gave them a feeling of permanence and belonging to a place they had co-created. For the exile from Vault 13, who had long ceased to be an outcast, it marked the symbolic decision to finally remove the characteristic blue jumpsuit with the number 13 on the back. It was a moment of closure for a certain chapter in their life, and full acceptance of the new role they now fulfilled. Together, with his wife Patricia, they led the village of Arroyo with wisdom and experience gained from years of travel and challenges. Their leadership not only strengthened the community, but also inspired the residents to collectively build a better future. Arroyo, named after the life-giving stream that was its source, flourished under their guidance. The exile and Patricia became symbols of hope and renewal, reminding everyone of the power of cooperation and community in the face of adversity.